Today on Sports Center, we go over our 2022 college football predictions for the Wisconsin Badgers, one of the top teams in the Big Ten in the 2021 season, as this team went 9-4 overall. How will this team be in 2022? Will this team once again win the West Division in the 2022 season? That's what we go over here today. We'll be analyzing this team, predicting their schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. Wisconsin 9-4 last season, 3-3 in their first 6 games, then 6-1 in their last 7. I mean, this team started out the season 3-3. That was not a very good start to the season for the Badgers. This team looked like, from the start, it looked like it was going to be a down season for this team, but they very much improved over the course of the season, going 6-1 in their last 7 games. But of course, their one loss was a pretty crucial one to Minnesota. Lost to Minnesota on the road 13-23, and that's what held them from getting to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. So, of course, that was a tough way to miss out on the Big Ten title game for a chance to win a Big Ten title, but in the end, I don't know if anyone was going to beat Michigan in that title game. But Wisconsin, 9-4 last season, wasn't a bad season. Lost to Penn State week 1, 10-16. Beat Purdue on the road, 30-13. That was a huge win. They also beat Iowa, the Hawkeyes, when they were starting to fall off a bit, 27-7. Beat Rutgers 52-3. They once again lost to Minnesota, 13-23. Beat Arizona State in their bowl game, 20-13 was the final score there. So that was a good way to finish out the season for Wisconsin. And in the end, it was a 9-4 season for this team. But obviously a bit of a disappointment, missing out on the Big Ten championship. But this team is very much right back in the conversation to win a Big Ten title in the 2022 season. Roster preview going into next season. This team does return the starting quarterback, Graham Mertz. He's returning for the 2022 season. Last year, he was underwhelming to say the least. He put up 1,900 yards, 10 touchdowns, 11 picks, and a 59% completion rate. So those are poor stats for a quarterback, and certainly he could have played better for this team. But in the end, what got this team to 9 wins last season was the backfield. You had Braylon Allen, who came out of nowhere and had a great season, 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. And of course, Chez Mellusi, he put up over 800 yards, nearly 900, and 5 touchdowns. So you got 2 excellent running backs there in the backfield that really, saved this offense from being terrible last season. And of course, the receiving core, it's not going to get much better going into the next season. You lose Danny Davis III, who was the top receiver on this team, putting up nearly 500 yards. You also lose your second receiving tight end, Jake Ferguson, and you also lose your second wideout, your third in receiving on this team, Kendrick Pryor. So you do lose 3 of your top receivers from last season, but the backfield looks really good going into next season. That's really all you need is, for this team. Wisconsin's always a huge rushing team, and they found their guy with Braylon Allen. He's going to be a major threat in the backfield next season. He put up 1,300 yards last season, 12 touchdowns. He's still a very young running back, and that's what is so amazing about him. He was a true freshman last season, and he put up yards like that. And his size too is, he's 6'2", 240 pounds, which is incredible. So Braylon Allen, keep an eye on him. He is major threat in the backfield going into next season, but obviously the passing game could be better. You lose 2 on the offensive line, 1 defensive lineman, 3 linebackers, and 4 in the secondary. So defensively, you lose 8 of your starters. That is a concern going into next season. There's moderate amount of losses for this team, but it brings up the question. There are still some factors that really go in favor of the Badgers. What are the chances that this team wins a Big Ten West title once again next season? And I'm going to tell you right now, the Big Ten West is wide open going into next season. There are 2 divisions in college football in the Power 5 that are wide open, and the ACC Atlantic is the other one. But the Big Ten West is the one that I'm especially looking at. You got Wisconsin, you got Purdue, you got Nebraska, you got Minnesota, and Iowa. All 5 of those teams are very much able to win the division next season. And you can't even forget about Northwestern. They literally just won it a couple of years ago. They've won it a couple of times in the past 5 years. So Northwestern, they're in the background. I don't expect them to be too good. And Illinois, of course, Illinois is the one team that I really think is, they don't really have much of a chance to win the division, but it's a wide open division going to next season. And I really don't think we're going to see a big standout in the Big Ten West. Wisconsin and Purdue, even Minnesota and Iowa. Once again, all 5 of those teams that I mentioned are very much capable of winning the division, but none of those 5 teams do I see really getting 11 wins plus in the regular season next year. I mean, even 10 wins might be a reach. We could see all 5 of the teams, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue, Wisconsin, get 8 wins next season, and maybe a couple get 9. And the winner of the division could very well be a 9-3 team next season. So it's wide open. Wisconsin's very capable of winning the division, even though, I mean, the talent on their team I don't think is on a level for them to compete nationally. But, I mean, certainly this is a team with potential going into next season. Transfer portal and recruiting going into 2022, you do lose a few players. You lose A.J. Abbott, receiver. He's in the transfer portal. You also lose Harrell, defensive back, and Isaac Smith, also a receiver. But really, all 3 of those players really didn't have too big of an impact on this team last season. You do bring in defensive back Justin Clark, defensive back Jay Shaw, defensive back Cedric Dort. So, I mean, you got 3 big-time defensive backs coming in from different schools. So you lose 4 in the secondary, 4 of your starts from last season, but you bring in some good depth from the transfer portal, so that's huge. You bring in a receiver, Keontez Lewis from UCLA, and Latu, safeties coming in from Utah. Recruiting-wise, not very good. 44th in the nation, 11th in the Big Ten. You got 2 4-stars and then 13 3-stars coming in. So, I mean, that is somewhat of a concern for me for Wisconsin, is this team really doesn't have, I mean, they're not really benefiting from recruiting or the transfer portal going into next season. I mean, the defensive back, the secondary does improve, but otherwise, that is a bit of a concern for the future. The recruiting was not very good for this 2022 off season, but we'll see how that impacts the future. But looking at your schedule as we go into next season, you got Illinois State to start off the season on the 3rd. Then you got Washington State coming up in week 2. It's an interesting matchup. You got Wisconsin and Washington State there. That should be definitely an intriguing one. You got New Mexico State then at home after that. Then your first road trip to Ohio State. That's going to be a tough one as your first conference game. You got Illinois coming to town after that, Northwestern on the road, Michigan State on the road. You got Purdue coming to town, Maryland as well after your bye, Iowa on the road, Nebraska on the road, and then Minnesota at home to finish out the season. So looking at September here, Illinois State, easy win. Washington State, Cougars could be a decent team next season, potentially 6 to 8 wins. But I think Wisconsin takes care of them, even though it might be a bit closer. New Mexico State, easy win. Then Ohio State on the road. Going to favor the Buckeyes there. Ohio State next season, I mean, that's a team that, we could very well see a rematch of Ohio State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game later on. But Ohio State, I do think they're my favorite to win the Big Ten East next season, even though Michigan isn't far behind. Ohio State is, C.J. Stroud, they've got potentially the best quarterback in the nation. They're going to be a big national contender, so I'm going to favor the Buckeyes there. Then looking at October here, Illinois at home, easy win. Northwestern on the road. I'm going to put that game in yellow, but I'm certainly favoring Wisconsin there. I definitely think Badgers win that one. Then you got Michigan State on the road. That game is a toss-up, could go either way, but I am going to favor Michigan State there. Spartans next season, I don't think will be quite as good as the 2021 season. I think they still probably get 9 wins next year, but Michigan State, I don't know if they'll be in a New Year's Six bowl game, but still that's going to be a good team. They get the win there in East Lansing. Then you got Purdue coming to town. That's a huge one. Potentially that could very well decide who wins the Big Ten West. Purdue is a big contender in the Big Ten next season. It sounds crazy because they haven't been a big contender in a while. Last season they were actually pretty good, but 2022, that is a team to keep an eye on. They could very well go out and win the Big Ten West. So that is a huge matchup on the 22nd. I think Wisconsin gets the win there in a close one, and that's going to give them a huge advantage, I'd say, in the Big Ten West. And then in November, you got some crucial games. You got 3 big games in the Big Ten West. You're 6-2 heading into November. You're in pretty good shape, I'd say. Maryland, easy win at home. Iowa on the road. I'm going to favor the Hawkeyes there, even though, that game could easily go either way as well. But on the road in Iowa City, I do think Iowa wins that game this year. It's going to be close. And honestly, I feel like Iowa, maybe 7 to 8 wins next season. Honestly, out of the 5 that I mentioned with Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Purdue, and Wisconsin, I think Iowa's least likely to win the division out of those 5, but they'll still be in contention. But nonetheless, they still win off of Wisconsin there. Then you got Nebraska on the road. You win that one in a close one since Nebraska hasn't beaten you guys in forever. And Minnesota at home, you beat the Golden Gophers this season. You got them at home. You get the win there, and that win could very well seal the deal for you to go to Indianapolis once again for the Big Ten title game. So 9-3 is your record. Once again, the Big Ten West is wide open. A 9-3 team could easily win the division next season. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Badgers, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.